Hey guys, it's Ty.
And I'm Joe.
And we want to invite you on a journey of increasing your financial IQ
by learning about strategies millionaires and billionaires have been using for decades.
Welcome to the Wise Wealth Podcast.
Let's get started. Welcome to the Wise Wealth Podcast. Guys, today we have a very special episode. You know, when you guys are in class, you don't remember all those boring lessons. What you remember is stories, right? Stories. And we're honored because we have our very first guest, Ty. Man, what made us, out of everyone we could have possibly chosen, why did we choose
Well,
this?
I mean,
because I was available.
Yeah, he was the only one available for
the other three.
Nobody was available for. We needed to plug in a time slot, Joe. So that was that's the only reason that Jesse is here. So thank you for plugging in this time slot, Jesse. We appreciate your.
I try. Yeah.
But in all seriousness, let's give credit to where credit's due. So Jesse Reynolds is a mentor of mine, a dear friend of mine. I know Jesse from the last 10 years. We were in a business together. We would take leadership retreats to Orange Beach. Shout out to Andy Andrews, Orange Beach, Alabama.
That's right.
And we would do ministry together, marriage conferences together. We'd be baptizing dudes in the pool together. Just really, you can either go through life or grow through life. And this is someone that I've really grown through life with. And he's really introduced this topic to me. Actually, he didn't introduce it. I heard about it before, but he's the one that grabbed me and shook me and said, "You got to look at this. You got to look at this right now, Joe." And sometimes it takes someone like that to say, "Okay, I'm going to look at this. I'm going to get my questions answered." So very honored to have Jesse Reynolds on here.
A little sternness. Is that even a word? Is that a word? Sternness?
It is. It is now.
Sure. I need my wife, the teacher, to tell me if that's actually a word or not. Yeah, I mean, like you said, Joe, it's only appropriate to have Jesse on. He's the person who he introduced me to the whole concept of IBC and infinite banking, private family banking. He's the one who had me broaden my horizons and think, hey, is there a different way than what you've been told for 30 some years of your life? Is there a different way to handle your finances? And once he introduced me to that, I was like,
yeah,
I'm excited to hear what Jesse has to share with his story.
Yeah.
And just how impactful that's going to be to the listeners. But it's like you said, it's all about storytelling. And when we hear stories from other people of their experiences and how they used it, what they've learned, how they've helped other people, this isn't like completely scripted. So I'm excited to hear what Jesse has to share.
Yeah, Jesse, let's go ahead and dive right in. And thank you to all of our listeners. Every day we're getting notifications, more downloads, more 5-star reviews. Go ahead and, download, subscribe, give us 5 stars. We
hit 100 downloads. I didn't send that one to you, Joe. We hit 100 downloads on the podcast.
100 downloads.
It's exciting.
That's awesome. This is you guys are doing your part in getting this message out. But let's get started, Jesse. You want to dive right in? We want to hear your journey. You've been very successful in business. Started as a broke coach, kind of like me with Ty back in the day. Became an entrepreneur, very successful. We just want to hear your journey and how you got here, and just go for it, brother. Honored to have you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And this is actually my first time ever being on a podcast too, which is kind of weird and cool to think about. But yeah, and one thing I'll say too, because you guys, by the way, Wise Wealth podcast is my favorite podcast. I listen to it every week. Been sharing it out there. I probably helped get 50 of those downloads. I've just been shooting it out to everybody I can all the time. Because
keep sharing.
I will. But because what's important is, and I know today's topic, we're going to be talking some about like the difference between wealth strategists and money guys. And just in that, like, one of the most important things, and especially I look at it because I know the firm you guys are a part of, and really just your whole client process, it's all about education, right? And so just you guys, just even just what you two have shared already, just in the introduction here, everything about what you do started because you grew your financial education, right? It wasn't nobody came to you and just said, hey, I sell this product, you should buy this product, right? Which is how most people have that journey. And it's really weird for me to be a wealth strategist now, because this was nothing I ever thought I was going to do or saw myself doing. Ty, Rowan, and I, we go back to 20 plus years now, coach, of coaching Olympic weightlifting, which is, because I remember I got
20
I got
plus
my
years.
I got my first head coaching job in 2003, Episcopal High School of Jacksonville, and so it's wild to think it goes back that far. And so I was on one path, and I was going to be the greatest weightlifting coach in the history of Florida, and was with humility at that point in my life, at my age, I was kind of on that trajectory. I mean, I was 20, 24, 25 years old and winning national championships and doing the things that I had always dreamed about doing as a young man. But it was not getting us where I was winning on the platform with my athletes and my team, but I wasn't winning financially. And, my wife and I had just gotten engaged at that point. And I met a man who, although we're no longer close in the season, at that time, it's the power of just one right conversation with one right person at one right time that can forever change that trajectory of your life. And that's what happened. He asked me 3 questions. He said, do you love what you do? Are you paid what you're worth? And do you see yourself doing it the rest of your life? And I did love what I did at that time. I did love what I did at that time. I did not get paid what I was worth. Again, I mean, all humility, like sending kids to the Olympic Education Center and winning national medals and putting them on Team USA. And I mean, I worked 70 hours a week for $36,000 a year. I was not getting paid what I was worth. And while I always thought all I ever wanted to do is be a coach, was when he started sharing with me what his lifestyle was like, and this had nothing to do with being a wealth strategist, but it's so important because I think so many people in life, you kind of, you can get stuck in a rut, and being stuck in a rut doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, but I was going down one path. I think so many people, they start down a path and they incorrectly start to make that path their identity, right? Like coach, as much as I love coaching is what I did. It's not who I was, right? That was two separate things. And so when I started seeing the lifestyle that he had as an entrepreneur, and he shared a business opportunity with me, I very quickly realized that we had time debt, we had financial debt, that if we ever could figure out how to afford to start a family, I wasn't going to be present in my children's lives. And so I was at a place where I realized something had to change. And so that was what caused us, myself first and my wife shortly after. She really got on board with it too, but that's what caused us to go into the world of being entrepreneurs. And it did just happen to be a direct sales company. I didn't even understand what that was or what that meant. And we fast forward a few years later, and we're making more in a month than I used to in a year. And I actually myself, I chose to step away from coaching for a few years, just because I was able to see and understand the timing of that opportunity, that company that I was building. I was able to see the timing around that. I mean, we wound up building our organization, just my wife and I. We were doing well over $1 million a month in sales, and like some of you listen, you might be like a realtor or something, and you sell we're selling nutritional supplements, right? We're selling like $50 bags of energy drinks, and we were doing over $1 million.
A lot of volume.
That's a lot of volume. We had grown our distributor organization to about 10,000 distributors, and super grateful for all that. And that is where our paths originally crossed, Joe. It was through that company, and super blessed for that. But like I've already heard you share on here, things changed, right? And so so just in that though, while I never sought out to be a wealth strategist, I saw how so many of us were impacted in different ways based
Wow.
upon our level of financial intelligence. That's really what was the differentiator. You know, all of us had different levels of success in the business, but the other side of that, you know, we saw friends get divorced. We saw friends lose their houses. We saw just the devastation that happened in people's lives when a business was taken away. And while as hard as it was to see the business taken away, that wasn't the real problem. The real problem was people not building a strong financial foundation.
That's
Right?
great.
People, again, because even in that, again, just like coaching was my identity, if I'm being real, you know, all the blessings that we experienced in that business, that was becoming my identity. And that needed, I don't know if I was willing to lay that one down as easily, but that needed to be uprooted for me to you know, in order to open myself up to what else God had for us. And, you know, just going through that experience, and, you know, praise God. Again, you guys might hear my roosters. I already shared that. we live in the country, got some acreage out here. My chickens are free ranging outside my office right now. But the point is, like, we didn't lose the house. We didn't lose our marriage. You know, we have a deeper, stronger connection. You know, we're in a better place financially than we were when we lost that multi-million-dollar business 4 years ago. And it's because of that pursuit of financial education and learning the things that just the masses just don't know about. And infinite banking became an integral part of that. But that's kind of what led to this new career as a wealth strategist.
It's great that you have been refined by the fire as well. You know, that's something that I've learned not to judge losing $1 million business. You know, Jesse, I've learned not to judge that as bad, right? Because I've learned to only judge the goodness of God, because what came out of that is the refinement, the fire. So to hear you going through that fire, I mean, it's not great that people are losing, you know, these $1 million, but it's great to have the wisdom now to look back and say, okay, why? You know, what and what can I do? Because now that you've been through that, you know, now that you've been through that experiences, those life circumstances, and you're still standing. I'm still standing better than I ever did.
Oh,
Right?
sing it, Joe.
Yeah. So, but now,
Joe's life is a musical. Here's the deal. Joe,
Yeah.
I love Joe. Joe's entire life, like with his daughters and his whole life's a musical.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
But, yeah. Ty, do you have anything you want to ask Jesse?
You know, I think as humans, we sometimes we gauge success, and we gauge how well somebody's doing with well, how much revenue did that business make? You know, is he doing $1 million? Is he still doing $1 million a month in sales? Maybe not. But I think it's important to understand some of the other things that Jesse highlighted. I was a weightlifting coach, as he mentioned. Like we go back.
I was a
20,
coach.
20
All
plus
coaches
years.
here.
Yeah.
3 coaches.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, it's time consuming. Jesse mentioned, I wrote it down because this is powerful. He used the word, he had time debt. And to me, that it resonated really deeply with how I was spending my time before. And it wasn't spending time with my family. I feel like I missed years from my kiddos because I was, you know, working my W-2 job, working overtime at that job, and not spending time with the kids, always missing events and stuff like that. And to me, I feel like I'm just now that my little ones son just turned 12, Elizabeth's 8, she'll be 9 in a couple months. I feel like I'm just getting caught up. I just got out of the time debt. That was a very powerful statement that you made there, Jesse. That's how it resonated with me. You know, I was, 20 years ago, we go back, I was in law enforcement. So it's a stressful job, work lots of hours. Then I was working overtime, which, you tend to work like you have like unlimited income. So you can just work more and get a bunch more money. And then you have another full-time job because I didn't take weightlifting lightly. I gave it like 120%. So I was always doing that. So I got little sleep, didn't see my family, but I had a bunch of money. It's like, and I didn't do the right things with the money. Let's put it like that. I could have done, looking back at, IBC, if I had that 20 years ago, lights out.
Yeah.
So yeah, time debt. That was very powerful. Was that what you meant by time debt? Did you feel the same way, Jesse?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's because again, we do have that shared background, and just that's one of those things. Again, I'm so grateful for having those challenging questions asked. I realize we have a lot of female listeners also, and so this is all inclusive for everybody. But just I think as a man, too few men give other men permission to ask them challenging questions in life, and it's unfortunate. And so I'm eternally grateful. That again, even we've kind of grown apart just in different seasons. That other gentleman and myself, like it's gratitude, nothing but gratitude, because like when our first two kids were born, like we drove out to North Carolina to go see it. We just wanted them to meet him. Just because, like, literally, like the lifestyle we had, the father I am, the marriage, it all came through those challenging questions that I was going one way and now I'm going another way. And I don't want to get too far off topic, because this isn't, this isn't specifically about what you guys invited me on here to talk about. Other than, like, when I look at that first year and a half of building that first business, I was still working 70 hours a week. So I still. So I had that major time debt. We didn't have kids yet at that point, but I had that major time debt. We had that financial stress, and I still had to carve out that extra time. And that's relevant for because people who are listening to this, we're all at different spots in our financial journey, our professional journeys right now, and I think we live in a society that values comfort way too much.
Wow.
And really the way more valuable pursuit for us is freedom. And so I just want to encourage some of you is you may be in a place where things are a little uncomfortable. And I get that, like, to want to just, I just need to unwind, or I just want to escape, or I just, any of that. But I would just really encourage you, like, it might take a couple of years of sacrificing and carving out the extra time, being extra disciplined to create, that kind of like that initial boost to take off with your finances. But that escape from those circumstances is definitely available and accessible. And it can come through so many different means, but it may very well take doing something differently than what you've been taught to do, what you've envisioned yourself doing, what everyone else is doing. Like, I mean, the coaches I worked with, they would laugh because like, this is just such a simple example of the slide edge, right? The slide edge is doing simple, small disciplines over time can create massively different results over time.
Yep.
So again, with that super tight time I had, like that first business I built, I would bring my lunch every day. So I had a 35-minute lunch break. So I'd spend 35 minutes Monday through Friday. I would be eating my lunch in my office while I was working, and I had about a 20-minute car ride home. The mornings was too early because everybody was asleep when I was driving to the school, but a 20-minute car ride home on the way home. And, day after day, week after week, the coaches who I share my office with, they would laugh at me. They would, oh, there's Jesse selling his vitamins again and all that stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. But then in 2009, because I was at a really high-end private Christian school, I mean, like, this is, again, 14 years ago, it was $22,000 a year to send your kid to middle school 14 years ago, to like give context, like how high end this, a school I could never afford to send my own kids to, but I was working there. And so when the economy did this, as maybe some of us are experiencing right now, as this is being recorded, they wound up laying off like 30 teachers and coaches. Wow. I was the only one who had built a business before that happened. So when that happened, I just transitioned and split ways, and I never went back to work. And that was, again, 14 years ago since I last had a job.
Wow, that's amazing. And I wrote down, we can either value comfort or pursue freedom. Yeah. I think that's why you're doing those cold showers in the morning right now, right?
And listen, but we're going to do a whole new podcast. I'll be the next Andrew Huberman on here, like this. Yeah.
Yeah, take some cold showers. All right, man, that's great. Let's get into this, Ty. I know we got some questions. We want to hear, I think we titled this, "What's the difference between money guys and a wealth strategist?" So let's get into, how you got introduced to IBC, what hurdles you had to climb through just to really, focus on this and make it a priority, and then start sharing it with the world, and some of the things you've learned. Ty, I don't know if you have any specific questions, but let's go ahead and start there, brother.
Yeah. Just start at the beginning. How did you find out about IBC, and what compelled you to listen to who or whatever it was that introduced you to it? Why don't we just start at the top, Jesse?
Yeah, for sure. So I probably got introduced to it around the same time that you did initially, Joe. I don't know if I remember like the exact first specific conversation, but we were in a lot of those similar circles, and it always sounded super interesting. In full transparency, I guess we should probably define infinite banking, just because I know so this might be somebody's first time getting to check out the Wise Wealth podcast, right? So it's just a properly structured, overfunded, or cash maximized permanent life insurance policy is what it is. And then there's learning how to use it. And so in that, why I needed to say that part is I would hear that, but if I'm being real, I'm in my 20s, I'm making $500,000 a year. We don't have any kids yet. Like life insurance just wasn't really interesting to me. I just, and we were, one of the things in that other company we were always told is, oh, you'll will this to your grandkids someday. So I thought I had already done the hard work. I'm so awesome. We don't need it. And that was the lie that I was kind of caught up in. And again, we already talked about how then that business was taken away 4 years ago. And for me, then I was watching, there was like a core group of guys they're kind of like, like IBC evangelists, maybe you'd call them.
Yeah.
And that just, they again, and they weren't in the space. They weren't licensed, but they just used it and believed in it. And one of them was our friend, Matt. And so, Matt got me to read a few years ago. He got me to read the What Would the Rockefellers book do? And I think now it's called What Would Billionaires Do? And that just, it was always interesting. And it was like I had these couple of small unanswered questions, and it just connected the dots. It brought it all together. I was like, okay, I get it. And why I mentioned some of those friends who were IBC evangelists through the years was when all of us went through that same experience of having a business, a significant 6 or 7 figure income taken from us overnight. Every single one of them who were big on IBC made seamless transitions.
That's right.
They not just transitions. It was like a launching point. Like so many of them stepped into better. And again, being real, like I had a very low financial thermostat. I told you guys, I used to work 70 hours a week and make $36,000 a year. Okay. So when you're making $500,000 a year, it's like, oh my goodness, could it possibly, it could never get better than this. Right. And what a depressing thought to be in your mid 30s and think it's never going to get better than this. Right. Wow. Like why shouldn't it get better than this? What, like if I go, I just turned 40 last month. Like if 30 years from now, I'm not wiser, smarter, more wealthy, healthier, have better relationships. But like I've wasted 30 years.
That's right.
Right. Like that, like we should always be growing. And so that just became a conviction point. And the one thing, and this is not what all wealth strategists do, but I think this just highlights it so well because yes, we all have an insurance license because you need an insurance license to help people set up IBC. I didn't go at this as an insurance guy at all. I actually got into kind of this field was because I got heavily involved with Forex trading. And Tyra, I know you've done some of that with us too, and you've kind of seen the inside of what I do with that. But I got involved in trading pretty heavily, but then really what I started doing was I realized there were a lot of people who were very interested in that, and they didn't know where to start. And so I wasn't giving financial advice. I just started providing a community where I did a lot of communication and education. And I started to equip people on how to, if you were interested in getting involved with Forex trading or investing, how could you start doing that? What are the risks you need to know about that every other guy out there on YouTube is not telling you about because they try to make it sound like it's all sunshine and rainbows, and it is not. It is, I mean, thank God IBC is nothing like that, right? But just what I found was just that happened to be the path I was led down a few years ago. And through that, I realized how much people valued education on
That's
simple
good.
financial things they didn't understand. And so then, when again, we had decided infinite banking was the right play for our family, and I'd gone through that experience already of seeing how much people valued getting education in that financial arena. So I just looked at it and said, well, I might as well get licensed so I can be the one helping people. And that was what led into, into doing insurance with that. And since then, there's, many other financial plays that I just really look at it as I'm just here as an education source. That's really at the heart of it. It's all about education, because at the end of the day, I'm not responsible for my client's retirement. Like I have a fiduciary responsibility, right? But like if that gets messed up, they're the ones who they have to deal with the consequences of that, right? So like we really slow play. I just had it again this morning. Driving home, I dropped my kids off at school in the morning, but before I drove back here to do this podcast. And I had a client reach out, and she's wanting to know about doing some IRAs with her kids, and she's wanting to do infinite banking and do some other things. And she did, I answered some questions, and I just said, hey, and she's already a client. She's already got 2 infinite banking policies. She's already got, we helped her put a zero floor on one of her Roth IRAs. So like she's already in this process for herself. And I just said, Kit, why don't we just hop on the phone again and talk through this? And she said, I love how you're not just trying to jump to the, like, let's just make the sale. Like she wants that. She loves that we're educating and walking her through this process. Cause her kids are, I think, like 14 and 18, I think, off the top of my head. Like, I mean, that's decades that they're going to have to live with these decisions. Like it's worth taking a minute and slowing down and not just seeing a dollar sign or a commission right off the bat.
That's great.
That's powerful. Yeah. The amount of education that, we do, obviously, Joe and I, one of the reasons we started this whole podcast was this right here, educating people, in the IBC area. So that's cool to hear kind of your backstory of why you're doing it and why it's so important. And you said something, Jesse, I wrote this down here. You said that when the folks, that there was a core group of guys, they weren't like insurance agents or anything, but they had IBC policies, and they made a seamless transition to their next venture, their next business when that one was taken away. Why is that? Why did they make a seamless transition?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. Now I'm sure they could give some more insights than I can, but just, for observation. So first one is just having IBC in place. One of the things I always tell people about infinite banking is, because some people look at it like, oh, I'm 55, I kind of missed my chance. And yes, the younger and healthier you are, sure, you can get some lower base premium amounts, and maybe a little higher percentage can go into your cash value. In general, that's not usually the most important part. The most important part is how long has it been in force. The longer you have your infinite banking policy in force, the more and more powerful it gets. So in that, again, that core group of guys, they had been doing the infinite banking game for 8 or 10 or 12 years at that point. So there's just a lot of options that come along when you do that. Because remember, with infinite banking, it shouldn't just be about, I have a bunch of cash. So like that's important, right? Having that guaranteed tax-free growth. That's an important, that's probably like the sexy thing that first gets people interested in infinite banking, but from a lot of my conversations I have with clients. But really, and again, this goes to the wealth strategist part again, is if all you're doing is letting it sit there and you're never using, the term I use is interest arbitrage, right? Where you're borrowing the cash value, you're using it to generate more interest than what they're charging you, you're repaying it, and that recycling of dollars over and over again.
Yes.
That should really be the aim, right? And I don't know, I've never actually seen the term interest arbitrage, but that's just how it's always made sense for me. Like it's just,
I think
you're capitalizing.
You need to
coined it.
Go ahead and restrict
Makes
that.
sense to me.
That's trademarked, copyrighted. You go to interestarbitrage.com to follow me. No.
Go buy that site, man, for our listeners.
Domain's already been secured.
That's it. Yeah. Let's just hold on. Don't publish this podcast yet, right? But it is. That's how I've always referred to it. And so you're recycling those dollars, and you're going into to greater and greater cash flow producing investments. Right? That's the real key. Again, I realize many people, like, you might have consumer debt right now and you're just wanting to use this to create like a debt snowball inside of your IBC. That's fantastic. That's great. But that next level should be about buying cash flow producing assets. And the longer your infinite banking, private family banking system is in place, the more opportunities you have available to you, right? Because it's the whole rich dad poor dad thing, right? The poor middle class buy doodads and the wealthy buy assets.
That's right. Hey, let's give our listeners an example of the interest arbitrage. Let's just talk about maybe a vehicle. Let's talk about a vehicle, buying a vehicle, what that looks like, recapturing those dollars. Can you give them an example?
For sure. And I think if you guys haven't listened to Joe and Ty's previous podcast, go listen to that, because they went into a lot of what the wealthy know about 401k. So I'm going to use this with the comparison of a 401k, right? So what are most people doing is they're just stuffing money into the 401k like that. And one of the biggest challenges with it, besides the unknown tax consequence in the future, one of the biggest challenges you have with a 401k is limited accessibility to your funds. Basically, if you're not yet 59 and a half, you're going to get an instant 10% penalty plus taxes. And so most people just set it there and you don't deal with it, and you just hope the market doesn't go down too much over time. So that's kind of like most people deal with. But so when you have money that you're building inside of your infinite banking system, instead, let's say you have $30,000 now that you built up there, and you want to go buy a car. So if you had just been put into your 401k, well, you can't use it and access it without penalties. So you just go get a car loan. So instead of going, because you built your infinite banking system, instead of going to Honda or Ford or Tesla or wherever you're going to get your car loan, you're going to go to the Bank of You. And so you borrow $30,000. Now, all these numbers could fluctuate, and every company has different nuances with their policies and everything. The company we are currently writing a lot of our policies with, you can get a fixed loan rate of 4%. So you borrow $30,000 at 4%. And this really becomes, key. A lot of us who buy into this concept, this financial play, we've all read Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. He talks about the concept of the key to really make this work is you want to be an honest banker, right? Like you wouldn't cheat the bank. You wouldn't cheat the credit card company. You don't cheat yourself. It's your bank. It should be that much more important to you. So, you borrow $30,000, and let's just say you pay it back over 5 years, just like you would a normal car loan. Okay. So $30,000, they charge you 4% to borrow it. You're going to wind up paying back about $3,100 of interest on that $30,000 that you borrowed. And it's because it's a decreasing balance, simple interest loan. Okay. Now, this is the beauty of the interest arbitrage. During that 5 years, because you borrowed the $30,000, you didn't withdraw the $30,000, it is still inside of your policy, working for you, earning uninterrupted compounding interest. Now, you may very well earn more than 4% on it, but just to highlight this, assume that you only earn 4% on it. So it cost you 4% to borrow. They pay you 4% of uninterrupted compounding interest. In that same 5 years, $30,000 at uninterrupted compounding interest of 4%, you'll wind up earning $6,500 on that. So the interest that's the interest arbitrage. It cost $3,100 to borrow it, but they paid you $6,500. Plus, if it's properly structured, your death benefit should have grown during that time. Also, that's a whole separate conversation. And so you netted, and this is what's important, because full transparency. There's some guys out there in the space that they're brilliant, they're great marketers. I use some of their resources to educate these concepts. Some guys like to over sensationalize this and oversell infinite banking. It's a solid enough play that you don't need to exaggerate. Yeah. So what'd you do there in that 5 years? It was the same car payment you were going to make all along, but you netted $3,400 of interest. Did you become a millionaire in 5 years? No. But did you? This is my favorite word. When we're talking about infinite banking, did you become more efficient? Yes, absolutely. You became more efficient with your money. That's $3,400 you wouldn't have had otherwise, plus that growing death benefit that you get to use.
Jesse, and
powerful.
There's so many things that are even more beneficial than becoming more efficient. What if you lost your job during that time and you hadn't had an infinite banking policy, you lost your job and you owed whoever, Honda Finance, Capital One, whoever, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, at their rate, which wouldn't have been 4%, especially in this season right now, with 800 credit score, you're probably still looking at 5 or 6%, which is high for a car. What would happen to that about 500? I'm looking at an auto calculator right now. 5 years at 30,000, it's about $600 a month. What would happen if you lost your job and couldn't make the payment to your bank, to your IBC bank? What would happen?
Good question.
No, that's a fantastic question there, right? And so nothing, at least nothing in terms of like dealing with the repo man or having creditors call you and all that.
You're not losing your car.
You're not losing your car. And this is super important to get is the flexibility of terms, because what most people don't understand about life insurance companies is they think all they do is collect premiums and pay death benefits. Now they do those two things, but they are also incredibly savvy investors. And I think I remember, Joe, you mentioned that last week's podcast. And this is super important to understand. Like when they set up your policy, they already know that they're going to eventually turn, net profit on that between what your premiums are and with that eventual death benefit payout. So if in that unfortunate circumstance, you lost your job, you have a tight cash flow, you can just pause repaying your loan, whatever time frame fits and makes sense for you. Let's go a step bigger than this. We all have a mutual friend, JP. He's mentored all of us in some way in this level. He was one of those first guys from that company who we always heard talking about IBC. And when he also lost his 7-figure business 4 years ago, like all of us did, and he had purchased a home from his own bank. Remember I said the longer it's in play, the better infinite banking gets. So I want you guys to get this. And we didn't even like script this, but I'm just being reminded of the story. So, because he had his bank in play for several years at that point, he loses a significant income like that overnight. And he was able to go 12 months without making a single mortgage payment because it was his own personal bank, while he would then, and he wound up building and launching a completely separate career. Right. And so just that flexibility and that lack of stress like that, or imagine if it was a rental property instead, not your personal residence, but a rental property, and you couldn't get a tenant in for 6 months.
And just the freedom not to have to deal with the bank,
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so if it took you 6 months to get a renter in there, well, then you have that flexibility of 6 months before cash flow starts coming in, and then you start repaying the loan. Yeah. It's a different level of freedom. And again, why a lot of us like to use that phrase, unbank yourself. It's trying to separate yourself as much as you can from the banking system.
This is why real estate investors really love IBC. We can do a whole podcast on that particular,
We are.
You better. I want to send it to people.
Yes.
It's next week. Spoiler alert. It's on our calendar for next week, Joe.
Not a better place to park cash and withdraw it, right? It's like an opportunity fund, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Opportunity finds capital.
Boom.
If you have no capital, you have opportunities are not going to fall on your lap. But it's funny when you do have capital, it seems like, oh wow, you have all these opportunities, whether it's real estate, other investments that you can deploy your capital into.
When it's not tied up, but it's your money anyway. That's.
Jesse,
but let's not.
Those examples that you gave, Jesse, that kind of answered. I asked you earlier in this. I said, why did that core group of guys that were using IBC? Why did they make seamless transitions?
Oh, sorry, and I wanted to answer the second part of that. Can I? So because that was like the foundational piece. But the only thing I was going to add is because if you've begun the process, even if you're just exploring infinite banking, listen, the fact that you're exploring this, you're already a step beyond most people out there when it comes to financial IQ. And then if you go to that next step and you actually, you schedule a wealth strategy session, one of these guys, and you actually start implementing infinite banking for your family, you're now another step ahead in the financial game than what the masses are doing. And it's the point is once you have like humbled yourself and began that process of I'm just going to keep growing my financial IQ, right? Like that. What you will find happens is you're going to be able to start identifying more and more and more opportunities. And you're good, like Judah, so that like you said, Ty, opportunity meets capital, right? Or finds capital. And so they started having other cash flow producing assets, another event, because unlike what, and I'll throw you under the bus too, Joe, unlike what the two of us had done initially was we thought the end all be all was that one business. They saw their business as a launching point and just kept seeking out more and more and more and more opportunities. You know, and I literally, I just put this on my Facebook yesterday. It's a simple prayer. Lord, give me the eyes to see the opportunities you place in front of me for my family's provision, right? Like that's just something like anyone who knows me now, 4 years later, they know I will look at any opportunity. I look at bad opportunities regularly. But if you're not willing to explore bad opportunities, you're not going to find all of the great opportunities that are out there.
That's right.
And again, that's one that's for my family, because I don't say I have regret, but I have conviction. Like I get convicted by what could we have done if we had implemented this 10 years earlier, right? Like we could have been that much further down the path in some areas. But then also as a wealth strategist, you know, I have a responsibility to understand how these different investment plays work, and figure out things that people, because again, my clients, if they decide to do infinite banking, they're regularly asking opportunity fund, what are different opportunities? And so, you know, we go through all sorts of things and talk about risks. And honestly, a lot of the stuff I spend my time learning now is centered around technology, because listen, technology is, how would you like to have had Bitcoin 10 years ago? Right. I mean, and like, regardless of people's thoughts on crypto, just the reality is if you had understood it, at least at a surface level, and identified it, and you bought just a little bit of Bitcoin, I mean, you'd be a multimillionaire just off that one.
Right.
And that didn't even take a lot of capital. That took just growing your thinking a little bit outside of the narrative.
Yeah.
Powerful. That's great. We've had such an amazing time here, Jesse. You know, we can keep going, but Ty, we're nearing the end here. How do you want to wrap this up? What question do you have for Jesse that you want to leave with our listeners? Or Jesse, any last thoughts as well? You know, so much value that you've already added. So thanks for being on today, brother.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jesse. This has been just a amazing time of listening to your backstory and what you've learned from really like a stirring of your faith when you had such a huge successful business taken away, and how you've grown your financial IQ from that. And I love how one of the things you said earlier was, you know, when something's taken away, I guess it's not always bad. You know, you stepped into a new season, and that being taken away kind of twice, because the teaching and kind of coaching was essentially taken away, and you stepped into that new season, very successful business, and then that was taken away, and now you stepped into another very successful wealth strategist business. So if people wanted to contact you, Jesse, how would they contact you?
Yeah. We've actually just finally launched our wealth strategy site, because everything we were doing was through social media communications, but just jbrwealthstrategies.com would be the best. All the contact social medias,
wealth strategies,
all that's on there. Yeah. And I will just add this one closing thought, just because then again, I know like what the difference between wealth strategists and money guys, and if you follow me on social media, I take plenty of shots at money guys. So, you know, I'm not here to go too far down that path, other than just this. When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? If all somebody is focused on is assets under management, and they get paid, regardless of if they get paid their commissions with no accountability for results. Like if you can lose money while they make money, like step outside, right? Just step outside of I realize that's what everybody's used to. Just like, and what other type of business would that even remotely make sense? right? Like, hey,
Yeah,
I
it
lost you
doesn't.
$100,000 this year. Oh, that's fine. Let's
still
keep
give
at
me
it.
my money.
Right?
Keep
Yeah,
your
let's
money.
keep at it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I
gonna
mean,
come
just
back. I'm getting paid,
no,
and you're losing everything.
there's no other business out there where that would make sense. And it's just people
Zero.
have been conditioned to, because again, it's the opposite. It's because too few people have any education on
Yeah.
like they couldn't explain to you what funds their money's invested in.
Yeah.
They couldn't explain to you the difference between average rates of return and actual rates of return. Most people have no idea how much they're actually paying in management fees. I think it wasn't until a few years ago they didn't even actually have to disclose how much they were charging people in management fees, right? Like things like that. If they here's one. If you are over the age of 50 and your money guy has never explained sequence of returns risk to you, that's
Leave.
a huge red flag. Well, I can't tell some. I can't. I'm not saying to. I didn't say that. That was Joe. Okay, but that's a red flag though.
Theoretically
And
speaking.
that's in your heart. No,
We'll
but
go ahead and rewind. Don't leave, but really pray.
No,
Do you want me to edit that one out?
No, we can leave. But the point is, that is a conversation you owe it to yourself to have.
Yeah.
And if they can't explain that to you, and if you are still exposed to that, that is a very big concern.
Yeah. That's a very big concern. Just, yeah. Jesse, I'm so grateful for having you on here. You are a true wealth strategist. I've seen you behind closed doors. The conversations I've had for you, the heart that I know you have for your clients, just how much value you've brought to so many families last year and the start of this year. For those of you who don't know, the Jesse is ranked in the top 3 out of hundreds and hundreds, over 500 agents, and he was number 3 in the entire nation for the value that he brings. So we're so honored to have you as a special guest here on behalf of Ty and myself and the Wise Wealth Podcast. Thank you to all of our listeners. If you like this, give us a 5-star review.
Yes.
Share this with a
Subscribe.
friend. Subscribe. This is our gift to you guys. Your gift to us is sharing this message. See you next week.
Take
God
care,
bless you
everybody.
guys.
Thanks for listening. Take care. If you would like more individual information on infinite banking or retirement account solutions, Joe and Ty would be glad to connect with you individually. Please email us at info@wisewealthpodcast.com, or you may visit us at our website at wisewealthpodcast.com and contact us there.